Welcome to Thrive. For some women, becoming a mom is a dream come true. But what happens when that dream is shattered by losing a pregnancy? What happens when you want to expand a family and the same happens? How does a woman navigate the grief without appropriate support? Join us today on a very important and raw conversation of this topic. I'm Natty.
I'm Vita,
And we're here to thrive.
Today we have a profoundly inspiring guest who has faced unimaginable heartbreak and found ways to turn her pain into purpose. She's a mother of 5 living children and 16 who rest in the arms of Jesus. Please join us in welcoming Cate Purvis.
Hi, Kate.
Hey, Cate.
Hey, my friends. Thank y'all so much for having me.
It is a pleasure.
It is definitely an honor for us.
Your story is one of incredible strength and faith. So, but you started very early as a mom. How did being so young when you started having kids had a perspective in your motherhood style or on your life?
Oh, goodness. So I had our first right after I turned 19. So I got married 6 weeks after I turned 18. And then within just a few months, we were pregnant with our oldest. And I think that the biggest impact that had is that, when you're so young, you think you know everything, right? You're the smartest and the wisest and nobody can tell you anything. But we didn't really have a lot of people to pour into us, and so there was so much from starting so young, and my husband and I both come from pretty rough childhoods. And so when we started out so young and didn't have a lot of people to pour into us, all we knew was to try and go to the Lord and do the best that we knew to do to honor him. But we had some people in our church who really, saw how young we were or how young I was. He's 9 years older than me. But they really saw just how young we were and that we didn't have like a lot of people to pour into us as parents. And they chose to take that on. And so, it was not in depth. It was not, we didn't have a lot of people coming over and saying, hey, let me be in your everyday. But we did have people who loved us well enough in church to say, okay, we see this. Let's maybe not do that. We see this, here are some better options. And even, into our first miscarriage, there was a lady in our church who, she came over one day. And I was probably 5 or 6 months post that miscarriage. So, and I still had a 10-month-old baby, and I was so angry and I just was not okay. And she sat down on my couch at our house and she said, how are you? And I said, I'm okay. And she said, no, you're not okay. You can tell God how you feel. He can take it. And I said, I'm fine. Everything is fine. I'm good. I'm good. And she said, no. If you're pissed off, tell him you're pissed off. If you're not okay, tell him you're okay. He already knows he can take it, but you have to be willing to express it. And so that, as a young mother, that one thing has been something that has so heavily changed the trajectory of my motherhood, and my marriage and really our life. That one simple thing really freed me up to be able to say, okay, in these moments where, I'm sleep deprived and the baby's asleep, or I don't get to keep this baby, or, my husband folded the laundry wrong, right? Just whether it's big frustration, small frustration, joy, whatever you feel, having that freedom told to me at such a young age really changed how I parent. Just tell God how you feel. And that really made a huge impact on me as a young mother.
Yeah, as we grew up, we were taught to fear God, okay? But we weren't taught to tell God the truth
Yes.
about how you feel, And when you were talking, I'm like, I remember when I was taught, you can talk to God like you're talking to me, and you can be truthful with your feelings. And I'm looking like,
No, I can't.
Not with what
no,
I've been
I
feeling.
can't. He gonna be mad, and he gonna stop blessing me. But it took me a while. My relationship really kicked into overdrive when I realized I could talk to him. Truthfully, I could tell him I wasn't okay. I could tell him I was ticked off, okay? And he can take it.
Yes. It really is freeing. If you think about, we're taught to fear God, and I don't think that, well, I was never really taught what that meant. I thought that I was always supposed to be afraid of God, but we know that there's no fear in love,
Exactly.
and that we don't serve a God of fear. And he didn't give us a spirit of fear. He gave us a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. So what did that mean? And so when I realized that meant to revere him, to stand in awe of him, it really changed how I was able to tell him how I feel. Because in a healthy relationship with someone you respect, right? We're talking on human terms, someone you respect, someone you love, someone you revere, you should have the freedom to speak how you feel, respectfully, kindly, but even those people that, think of like a trusted mentor or a grandmother or someone who you can just be yourself with, they have the spiritual and the emotional maturity to take what you say and understand what's behind it. How much more does our God have that? And the ability to say, I already knew what you were feeling, but I'm so glad that you came to me with it. And when we take that and we kind of see the fatherhood behind that in the way that he loves us, I have times so often where I have to turn off my feelings to be able to receive what my almost teenager is saying to me, right? I have to turn that off because it's not about me. God doesn't have that need to turn it off because he's only for us, right? And so he has no self-preservation method like we have. So when we go to him and we say, like, I'm so angry, I'm so hurt, he doesn't say, oh, well, well, I shouldn't have done, it's my fault. He doesn't do that. Right. And so when we see that he doesn't have that self-preservation, then I think that we can see ourselves in him and we can let down our own self-preservation to be truly honest with him.
Oh, yes. You've experienced the joy of new life and the heartbreak of loss. How did you cope with the losses of your babies, especially considering the frequency of your miscarriages?
Not well.
Okay.
I think that's the best honest answer. Like our society expects us to grieve quietly, and if we're allowed to grieve at all when it comes to a baby that nobody else saw. And so my grief comes and has come so differently with each one. I have had losses where I just wasn't sure I was going to be okay. I've had losses where the aftermath spiraled into postpartum depression and bordered on psychosis, and I was convincing myself not to kill myself. Like I've had those. I've had losses where I was like, okay, the Lord's going to get me through this, and I'm fine. I'm going to be fine. And that peace came. And I've had everywhere in between. And so for me, each individual loss was such a different kind of grief. It was such a different feeling a lot of times, because it's very hard when you have every confidence that you're going to hold a baby in your arms and then you don't.
Yeah.
And after so many losses, it becomes very, very difficult to build your faith to the point where you're like, okay, I know we're going to have this baby. And then you don't. And then you have to learn the faith behind, okay, that doesn't change anything. It doesn't change what I believe. My circumstances don't change what the word says. And so the grief changes so much with each loss. And, and then you have different stages of life that you're in that change your circumstances and your ability to grieve well. But I think the one thing that I have learned the most is how you grieve. It matters how you grieve. Not so much to God, right? God He's with us in it. And it sounds very cliche to say, but there are moments when you're face down on the floor, snot crying, naked in the bathroom floor, thinking you're not ever going to recover. And then suddenly there's this moment of peace and you hear that still small voice and he's like, you're going to get through this. And you go right back to snot crying, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you have moments or you have other times and other losses where in all of it, you realize that it's not so much mattering to him because he understands, he knows what you're going through. He is that wise counselor that you can be honest with. But it matters to your faith how you grieve. It matters to your faith how you grieve. And it's so hard because how you grieve so heavily depends on what's happening around you. And it so heavily depends on your support system and what that looks like. And not everyone gets the opportunity to learn how to grieve 15 times the way that I have. And so my encouragement to people here is, make an effort to grieve well. And that does not mean make an effort to not grieve. That's not what that means. Grieve openly, grieve publicly. Your baby existed. It is well to grieve openly, publicly. But in doing that, we have to grieve well. We have to grieve in faith, knowing that our baby is with Jesus, knowing that God did not cause this pain, but that he will redeem it for his glory. And that hope gives substance to the faith that we have. It's Hebrews 11:1. Faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
So one of the things that you do is you're a doula for moms. How that journey has helped your healing process?
Oh, goodness. I started out as just a birth doula. I say just a birth doula. Being a birth doula has been one of the greatest honors of my life, to be able to walk with women bringing their babies into the world on their terms. After about 6 months, I moved over into the miscarriage doula realm. Not really on purpose. It happened pretty organically, where I just had friends who would call and say, I know you've done this so many times. I'm losing the baby, or my friend is miscarrying and we don't know what to do. Can you help? And so, and then I've had, birth clients who ultimately lost their baby. And moving over into that, the first few times I was like, I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do this because it is willingly being triggered over and over and over and sitting through it. And, but I learned after a few times walking with these women that the same way that I didn't have anybody who knew anything about it to walk through it with me, they needed that. And there's a place in 1 Corinthians, and I'm not going to even pretend like I know where, but I know it's in 1 Corinthians. And it talks about the God of comfort comforting us so that we can comfort others. Maybe it's in John. It's in the Bible. Maybe I shouldn't pretend to know where it actually is. It's in the Bible.
It's in the Bible.
It's in the Word.
Yeah.
But it talks about comforting others with the comfort that God gave us and using that to comfort them. And that was really something that, for me, being able to be someone that I did not have, being able to ease and maybe help them through such a traumatic event where I didn't have anyone really to walk me through what was happening, and then to walk me through the grief afterward, to be there for the grief afterward. For me, in like counseling and therapy circles, there's a term called reparenting, right? Where you basically have to reparent yourself to learn things that you learned wrong in childhood. And I think that this was very much a similar thing for me, where the healing came through providing something, and by being that and doing that for them, I was essentially being that and doing that for myself as I relived the trauma through them. And so I think that I believe that it is something, it's a gift that the Lord gave me to give others. But I also believe that it is very much a gift that the Lord gave me to help me heal. And I think that is the whole point of that, where he gives us his comfort in order to comfort others. It's a healing on both sides, and a gift that he gives us both. And I'm so grateful for it.
I didn't know. Well, and I don't know if you're the only doula for miscarriages, because I had never heard of a doula for miscarriages. You do?
Let's have you, Katie, explain what a doula is for those who don't know.
I would love to. Okay. So a birth doula is someone who essentially is there with mothers during childbirth, whether they choose a home birth, whether they choose a hospital birth. A doula is someone who is there with them in order to make sure that they are specifically cared for and help them learn to advocate for their own desires during their birth. So as a birth doula, one of the things that I do as a birth doula, or I actually have stepped out of that realm now, but one of the things that I did as a birth doula was provide information for them to make informed decisions, right? Teach them how to advocate for themselves. So I like to teach my clients, when you're being pushed for a decision and you're not ready to make that decision, you always say, we need an hour to discuss it. If they can give you an hour to discuss it, it's not an emergency, right? And so learning to advocate for themselves when they're being pressured. One of the other things that I do is, I'm trained in spinning babies, which is maneuvering the body to help the baby maneuver out better. Non-medicated pain management. Okay, so just really being there to assist her in her. We like to say that, women deliver babies, right? They birth their babies. Doctors and midwives, they don't deliver babies, they catch babies. Right? So making sure that she is cared for and doing everything you can to help her have the birth that she desires, and then helping her process afterward. So moving that over into the miscarriage realm, what I do as a miscarriage doula, and some would call it a bereavement doula. So one of the things I do for there is if they needed someone to be there with them during it, go to them. If they're too far away to go to, or it's happening spontaneously and they didn't know, sitting with them on FaceTime or over the phone, explaining to them, okay, this is what's going to happen now. Like, this is what you're going to see. This is what you're going to feel. If you want to, if you'd like to bury your baby, then you're going to want to catch your baby. If you don't want to see it, then you need to sit on the toilet, and just kind of navigating them through that, giving them their options and letting them know, okay, this is what's coming next, so that they're prepared for it as well as they can be. You can never prepare for that, but so that they are, kind of aware of what's coming next, what could come next, what could happen. And then here are your options on how to deal with this. And then, here are some resources. Here's my favorite brand of ibuprofen. Here's my favorite, use Depends for the first few days, not pads, So just really being there with them to guide them and to help them, to make sure that they have everything that they need. Because husbands are fantastic, right? Husbands have a role. Husbands have no idea what's going on inside of our bodies, right? And when their best friend, the person that they are spending their whole life with, their soulmate, the other half of their one is in pain or emotional turmoil and stuff. They just don't know what to do. And these
They
women need
feel
somebody.
helpless.
Yes. And so, that's one of the things that I do as a birth doula and as a miscarriage doula is sometimes I just step away and tell the husband, okay, this is what she needs and you need to do this. So go to her and do this. And if you have questions about it, come back to me because I'm going to step out so y'all can have this moment together. And so just making sure that he is pulled in and that he is a part of this too, because I'm going to leave and he's not. So.
Wow.
Is the difference between midwife and doula? Is there a difference?
Drastically. Yes.
Okay.
So I love this question. The easiest way that I like to simplify this is a midwife is first off, a midwife is a medical professional, right? A midwife handles the waist down and a doula handles the waist up. It's the easiest way for me to say that. Okay. So a midwife's job is to make sure the baby and the mother are safe, right? She is checking, making sure everything is well with them physically and emotionally. A doula's job is to care for the mother emotionally, the mother's immediate needs that are non-medical.
Okay. All right.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And there are some midwives, a lot of times a direct entry midwife or a lay midwife. Usually they are kind of doing both, or they'll have a midwife assistant who kind of plays the doula role sometimes. So it really just depends on the midwife. But we had a home birth with a midwife for our last two boys, our only two boys, our last two babies, and it was incredibly beautiful and redemptive for both of them. But that same midwife has actually walked with me through multiple miscarriages just on the phone, just, hey, am I seeing what I'm seeing? Is this what's going on? Hey, pray for me. And then she's checking on me. So, midwives and doulas, because of the vulnerable place that we are with these women, we have such an honor of really just becoming friends for life. And it's really such a beautiful place and a complete and total honor to be able to be with women in these moments.
Absolutely. Cool. Yeah. I'm transported back to my first miscarriage myself. I didn't have anybody. My husband was at work when it happened. And I didn't, even though my mom lived not even walking distance. All I had to do was go down the steps. I didn't have the relationship to talk to her because she didn't have the experience of a miscarriage. So I remember going through that alone and not having anybody to even call. So I think there's a lot of blessing of people like you doing this kind of work because I know what a difference would have made. And I know that after the miscarriage, I had to go to the doctor and they did a DNC and the whole 9 yards. And yeah, I remember my husband didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to do. He just kept me in the bed when I came back from the hospital. And neither of them knew what to do. My mom didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to do. So it was, and my mom is one of those people, was, that get over it type of person. So handling grief with her was not an option.
Yes.
So I am glad not only that people like you exist, but the information that people like you exist is vital.
Yes.
Because I'll be honest with you, I didn't hear about doulas until recently, not like this week, but like some years ago. When I was, this happened in my 20s, I did not know about this. You only had an OBGYN in the hospital.
Yes.
That's all you know. That's all you knew to do.
Yes, that was all I knew until after my second child.
And that's very sterile and informal, and cold.
Yes.
So yeah, this is a blessing, and we need to let women know that there are people out there that can help you not only in your birthing moment, but also if you have to lose your baby, somebody that can actually support you through that.
Yes. Yes. There's a website. It's actually called Still Birthday. So
Okay.
it's like birthday and stillbirth kind of smashed together, stillbirthday.com. And so that is uh, one of the places that certifies birth and bereavement doulas, which would be a miscarriage doula as well. So
Okay.
that can be a resource for women who may be
I'll make
listening to
sure to
this.
put that linked in our description.
Now, with my 2 pregnancies, they were live births, but in the beginning, I was threatening miscarriage
Yes.
um, with the blood.
Yes.
So the doctors put me on bed rest.
Mm-hmm.
I was on bed rest for 9 months. It was my 3rd year in college with my first child. He said, you have to make a choice. Either have this baby or finish college. But you can't do both because stress was causing me to threaten miscarriage.
Mm-hmm.
And then with my second child, I was working on a Marine base, my husband, and went to the bathroom, saw blood. Doctor put me on bed rest again. I had to lay down 15 hours a day.
Oh.
Can you imagine? With my feet up
Oh.
in a certain position.
And a toddler.
And it's
Yeah.
Yeah, because this was the
Yeah.
second birth.
Jill
Yeah.
was 2
Uh-huh.
when I got pregnant with Leslie.
Yeah.
goodness
And
gravy.
it was difficult. Now going through that difficulty, the unsurety, being not sure of knowing, am I going to carry this baby to term or not? Because in one of my pregnancies, the doctors were trying to talk me into having aborting at 5 months. I had taken this blood test, drinking this, I call it black soda. That's what it tasted like. And they would do a blood test. They told me I failed it 3 times. So they told me that my child was going to be severely Down syndrome. And they suggested that I abort at 5 months. I told them no. Whatever God gives me, that's what I'm going to accept. And I thank God for that because my baby was not Down syndrome when he was born. Okay?
He's 35.
36.
Well, there you go.
And my oldest is 39. But just going through that messed with my mind, my emotions, and now to hear what you've been through, we don't discount any experience. Whether you almost lose a baby,
Mm-hmm.
whether you did lose a baby, or whether you lost 15 or 16.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult for your heart and for your mind.
Yes.
But then turning your pain into purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's good.
And I went through an experience that just came to my mind, and I know nothing about being a doula or anything like that. But there was and it comes to this because I know we're going to talk about how the church sometimes works with people with miscarriages. I had she's an acquaintance with a friend who she had a stillborn. I don't know if they call her miscarriage because she was almost due, and she started having contractions, but it was a stillborn.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, out of all the people around her, she wanted me to be the one with her. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I was relieving my own stuff through her. But it was an honor that she trusted
Yes.
me enough to do that. She was 3 days in the hospital. I was there. I brought food for her husband. Like you said, I was advocating whatever she wants, whatever she doesn't want, you'll get out. Um, and she had the baby in the room until they did a service at the hospital and
Mm-hmm.
everything. And the it was an honor, but it's something I would never forget. when they were going to take the baby to the funeral home for the cremation, she asked me to be the one who changed the baby. And it was such a special moment, but at the same time, it was such a painful moment. It was special because, again, she had family there, and she chose me to be the one to change the baby because they had her in a little dress, it was a little girl, and they needed to put her like in a pull-up to take her to the funeral home. And so I did all the changing, and I was just as delicate as if that baby was alive, and because it that was her baby, and that baby had a name and everything, and then handing it over, it was I get chills. It was quite the experience, and I hope that, like I said, I think I went into it thinking what I didn't have in my experience, I want her to have.
Yes.
So this is why this is so important, and I mention it because that was we knew her from church, and I remember that I was the only one who, after she went home, kept calling and going over. What do you guys need? What has happened? How is everything? So I know we're gonna have that conversation in a minute, but I think that sometimes we forget how much it's needed, not just when you have a baby at home that's crying and not letting you sleep, but when you actually come home empty handed.
Yes. Yes. And what an honor it is for you to be able to do that and be that for her and with her. And I think if it were treated more as an honor, I think if we were able to bestow on church people that there is honor in it, then people might be more willing to be that for people. But I think we run into a lot where it's a quiet honor. It's not an on stage honor. It's not something, was it they say character is what you do when nobody else is looking.
Right.
And it really is that kind of quiet honor that it doesn't give you the no one's patting you on the back, right? For taking a meal to a mom. Nobody is patting you on the back for, mopping her floor, folding her laundry. And, there's no, like, there's no, when you get home, there's nobody cheering, woo, look what you've just done. And that's what makes it servanthood. That's what makes it such an honor, is that you have to do these things because you love her and because you love the Lord. And it saddens me that it seems today in the church that's not enough. That's not enough. And if we could just help people to understand that even though it is a silent honor, okay, maybe immediately, but the day will come when she will be okay enough to come to you and say, you saved me. In those moments, you were Jesus to me. And that was all I had. I have been completely alone through most of our miscarriages, right? Like, majority of them, almost completely alone. Aside from, I have the most incredible, supportive husband in the world. He is 5 stars and he's hot. So, who's the real winner here? But he's an incredibly supportive human, and not everybody has that. But during our last miscarriage, which was in March, our church really, really just kind of surrounded us. And that was something that we had never experienced before. And they, and this was a different church for us. This was, we moved, and then we ended up having to kind of go back and forth between our 2 business locations, which are 3 hours apart. And we did that for about a year. And so when we were in our second location, we found this church that we were going to. One of the things they do so well is love people. And when we found out that we may be having a miscarriage. Actually, one of the pastors at our church down there, my husband wasn't going to make it to our first appointment. He was having to work in another state. And so I called her and said, will you go with me? And she went to my first appointment, which is a vaginal ultrasound, like butt cheeks were out and everything. And she was like, let's do this. And, so she was there with me when they said, we don't see anything at all. And she was with me for the next few weeks where they thought that we were having an ectopic pregnancy, and they wanted us to, start methotrexate, which is the abortion medicine to, remove the baby wherever the baby was, because it wasn't in the uterus. And she was there with us through that. And, our church really kind of rallied around us and prayed for us and checked in on us. And then when we ultimately did lose the baby, they showed up with Chick-fil-A for dinner for our kids and spaghetti and, hey, we'll come get your daughter for youth group so you don't have to do that. And, just completely surrounding us and showing us. And that, and that was just so recently. But for me, it was like, all the things that I've been saying the women need, I had in our last pregnancy, in our last miscarriage, that experience where it was like, oh my gosh, there are still people who are willing to do this. Because there comes a point when you kind of lose a little bit of hope in people. And you're like, is there anybody willing to just lay their life down? Is there anybody who's just willing to make some spaghetti for a mama? And then you see, I think sometimes the Lord sees that you need to see, like you're fighting this battle and then you think that you're overwhelmed and then somebody prays for your eyes to be opened and you see the angel army surrounding you. And it's things like that really kind of renew my desire to teach this to people and to say, hey, we got to do better. We've got to take this silent honor and be willing for it to be silent, because we know that it's going to honor her. It's going to honor her baby. And ultimately it's going to honor the father.
So we already into it. So let's talk about it. What are the most misconceptions and stigmas around miscarriages, and what are those challenges or changes that you want to see
in our culture or in the church?
We can talk about both.
All of it. They're honestly very similar. They're really the same, but being a Christian and a follower of Jesus Christ adds such a more heavy element to it. It makes it more pertinent for you to be willing to do these things. So, we have a lot of awareness in our culture, right? So everyone that we have a ribbon for everything. We have breast cancer awareness, autism awareness, Down syndrome awareness. We have miscarriage awareness. And I think largely in our culture, and I think it has a lot to do with social media, honestly, but in our culture, we've made everyone aware of the problem and no one has a solution, right? So we're all aware, but is that doing any good? So, here lately, we've seen a lot of awareness for miscarriage, for pregnancy loss, for these type things. And what we find there is solidarity, whatever that's supposed to be, but we don't see people getting dirty. We don't see people getting in the mud and saying, okay, we're aware of this. How can we support you while you're in it? And so that is the culture as a whole here in America, but largely also the culture in the church, which is really scary because our church culture should in no ways mirror the secular culture.
Right.
Absolutely.
They should not be mirror images. There should be a drastic difference. People who are not Christians should be able to look at our culture in the church and say, gosh, I really want what they have. And instead, there's really not a divider here. And so what we see is we see the awareness, but we don't see people saying, Okay, you had a miscarriage. You actually birthed a baby.
Mm-hmm.
However large, however small, your body went through the process to birth the baby. Your heart made room and planned a life for a baby. And now you don't have that baby in your arms. You don't have that future to look forward to. You're grieving. Let me help you.
Mm-hmm.
No one seems to see the fact that she birthed a baby. Her body went through a labor process, or she had a D&C, which is very similar in, not in process at all. It's not biologically similar to a C-section. But if you're looking at a natural birth and a natural miscarriage, the body goes through labor very similarly, right? But then also, if you look at something like a C-section and a D&C, you are having removed from your body the baby. So you don't have that process to go through, which is a very traumatic process, but also I think gives a little bit of closure. So you have that in C-sections and D&C. There are some similarities there just in methodology. Not surgically, but just, methodically. And so the parallels there don't seem to be made in our culture. The parallels between the live birth and the non-live birth. And they're largely, I think what it comes down to is that we don't recognize miscarriages as babies. And I think that is the hostility toward children in our culture, the hostility toward babies in our culture, I think has slightly bled over into the church. Most of the church will tell you that they're pro-life, but then when a mother loses a baby, when she loses that pregnancy, we treat it as if the baby never existed. And we go radio silent. And if we don't recognize that the baby existed, if we don't recognize the life of the baby, if we invalidate the life of the baby, we invalidate her motherhood. If she is no mother and there was no baby, then we leave no space for her to grieve. What could she possibly be grieving? How dare she grieve something that never existed? And that, I think, is where I think that's where the real disconnect is because we have not hammered into people the truth that life does begin at conception. And in the church, if we don't believe that life begins when God creates it, then at what point does the baby she loses become a baby? At what point does she become a mother? And at what point does she earn the right to grieve? And I think that is something that has transcended both. I think it's transcended the line between the secular culture and our church culture. And I think the way to fix that is for mothers to be given permission to grieve openly and to speak openly and to leave space and make space for her to say, my baby existed and my baby mattered and I'm still a mother and I should be treated as such. And I think that is kind of the thing that I stand on is, I speak openly about the fact that I've had 15 miscarriages, which has not come easily to me. It's not something, I don't bring it up in conversation in line at the grocery store or, but when we're in conversations with people and something gets mentioned, or someone says something about, oh, well, she recently lost her baby and stuff, I feel a duty to say, I've been there and I've done this 15 times. Let me tell you, based on my experience, how you can support her. Let me tell you what she needs right now because you probably don't know, or if a mom, if I find out that she has or is having a miscarriage, I can gently say, listen, I've been here and it's okay for you to grieve your baby. You need to grieve your baby and don't let anybody tell you that you can't. And if everyone around you says you can't, call me. I got time. So creating a culture, it really just boils down to a willingness to be open and to not let people silence you.
Right.
And, we can't allow as mothers, you two and me and my mothers, our sisters, our aunts, our cousins, our church ladies, we can't stand here and allow other women's motherhood to be invalidated because they don't hold their babies. We can't stand here and say, you're not allowed to grieve. We can't allow other people to not allow them to grieve. Because when God creates a soul, he creates a mother. When that soul is born, the mother is born. And so you are still a mother. Natty, you are still a mother. You are a mama. You were created a mama a long time ago.
Yes, 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 yes. Yes, you are. Yes, ma'am.
And the fact that you don't hold those babies with you, you know that your babies never felt pain.
Mm-hmm.
They never felt sadness or fear. They felt held and loved. And now in the arms of Jesus, they still feel held and loved. And when you get to them again, they will feel held and loved because you are their mother. For them, nothing has changed. For you, everything changed. But we have to hold this space for each other. This is good.
Yeah.
You can
This is
do
good.
this. You can do this with me. But I'm wearing
No.
lashes, so if I start crying, it might get crazy real quick. You might see them slide down my face.
Thank you. That's all I can say.
I witnessed a stillbirth. Very close friend of mine, one of my best friends, husband in the Marine Corps. She had already had miscarriage or a stillbirth. I think she had 3.
Mhm.
But I was there for the second one. They were up in Athens, Georgia. Husband had been with her in the hospital for days. I volunteered to come and spend the night in the hospital with her so he can get some rest. The night that I spent the night, I don't think she ever got past 22 weeks with any of her babies, the 3 babies. She was about 22, 23 weeks. I'd fallen asleep in the recliner, military hospital. And when I woke up to nurses and doctors around her bed. And when I looked at her bed, it was all red from her waist down.
Mm-hmm.
They disconnected her quick, fast, and in a hurry and started running down the hall with that bed. I called her husband. He joined me in the waiting room. This is why I want to talk about this. Husbands go through a loss as well.
Oh, gosh.
I was in the waiting room with her husband. He was crying. He was pacing back and forth. And he kept saying, I told her not to do this again. I told her we didn't need to do this again. She already had a son. We got married. That's my child. And if we can't have one together, I'm okay with that because her life means more than to keep putting her life in danger. But she was dead set on bringing a baby here for him. 3 miscarriages or 3 stillbirths. They called us in the room and she had a baby. And her baby was deceased. I got to see the baby. I got to see her. She went through everything that a woman would go through in her 9th month. And her baby laid on a table next to her, stillborn. That tore me up. It tore me up. It took me a couple of weeks for me to, get back in my right mind. But I witnessed that, and then I have a niece who had a stillbirth. And they left the baby in her room for about 3 days with her. I had never seen that.
Yeah, that was the experience I had with.
I had never seen that. With the baby in a gown next to her, and she could hold him.
They took pictures and everything.
But he was gone. He was gone. Wow. I didn't even know. I'm sure God can get me through anything. I know this. But that was something that I thanked him for me not experiencing myself. But I witnessed it. And like I told you, just the thought that I may lose my children, that messed up my mind. But to actually have it done, that's such a different story. And things happen for a reason. And I know this is not something that anyone wishes on themselves. But if we don't take our pain and turn it into purpose, it will kill us. If we don't put our attention on somebody else to give them what we wish we had, or to give them what we did have that you just want to pass on to somebody else, it takes a special person. And that special person right now is you. It's you. It's you. I don't know if there's monetary from it or not, but this is bigger than money.
Oh, yeah.
This is about a person's life and the quality of life after, in their new normal.
Yes.
In their new normal.
Somebody said, maybe it was my therapist. Somebody said that trauma is less about what happens to you and more about how you and others address what happened to you. Right?
Absolutely.
And I think that is such a big part of, me I want to empower people and encourage people to be the people who help to lessen the trauma by being the hands and feet of Jesus to these women. The things that we see during miscarriage, the image of holding your stillborn baby, which I have never experienced that. And I genuinely, after everything that I have been through, I can't. But to be with these women in the aftermath, the way that we treat them is going to determine the environment that we create for them is going to determine the impact of the trauma. And that seems like a heavy weight to put on people, right? But are we not to bear each other's burdens?
Right.
Are we not to take some of her weight onto ourselves? And I know that we've been taught by our culture not to do that, right? That's their cross to bear. But that's not what my Bible says.
Right.
That's not, can you imagine if Jesus had said, no, that's her cross to bear.
Right.
Yeah.
That's your cross to bear.
Right.
Can we absolutely imagine that? And for us to not be willing to bear that cross with her, to say, okay, let me create an environment for you. Let me help to be a part of creating an environment for you where this trauma is lessened, where you remember what you held in your hands. You remember the pain. You remember holding your baby. But you also remember that there were people there who loved you through it. We have a choice to make. Do we let her go through those horrible things and then spend years thinking about what she needed and didn't get? Or do we let her go through that horrible? We can't stop the pain. We can't stop the happenings from happening. But we can help how her mind and her heart and her soul frame those things to affect her life moving forward. There are things that we deal with every day in our lives, reactions that we have that are caused from childhood trauma, right? Things that, like reactions that I have where I have to go back and apologize to my kids because I'm like, this was not your fault. This is me. That's not you, right? And yet we don't recognize that in trauma from things like this, where we can go in and say, okay, this is happening. This did happen. But we don't have to let it frame the worldview for moving forward. We don't have to let loneliness in your darkest moments frame her worldview. we can let feeling safe and loved and taken care of frame her life going forward. And you know what that does? That builds people's faith.
Mm-hmm.
That builds
Absolutely.
people's faith.
Mm-hmm. So you have a ministry. Tell us the name of your ministry.
Yes, so I started the Christian Miscarriage Co.
Mm-hmm.
And so we, it's kind of in its infancy right now. So I have a podcast. It's the Christian Miscarriage Co. podcast.
Okay.
My husband and I are actually right now going through the book of Job, kind of in a semi-expository manner, which has been fun because my husband does like a spirit-filled expository podcast. So having him come in here, going through the book of Job, which is my favorite, has been so much fun. But with the Christian Miscarriage Co., one of the things that I do is travel and talk to churches and speak at women's ministries and events, you know, talking about not necessarily miscarriage and pregnancy loss, although I do that for, you know, specific events and such, but primarily talking about God's faithfulness in our grief and how to see his faithfulness. Not everybody's story is miscarriage, right? Grief comes in so many different forms. Grief comes in, you know, some people lose spouses or children. Some people lose their marriage. Some people, you know, churches split. They lose jobs. Grief comes in so many different ways. You know, they lose their dog, and that's traumatic too. You know, like this grief happens in life, and it's not always miscarriage. But by telling my story and showing the repeated showing of how God, it's not that he just kept showing up, it's that he never left.
Right.
And he continued to put people in my path to move me closer and closer to him. That is a story that I tell to resonate with so many different people. And so I travel and speak, but then I also just published my first book.
Yes, tell us all about it.
Right.
So, I'm going to get to, okay, hold on. I'm going to get to that. My first book is called Words I Could Not Say, Musings of a Miscarriage Mama. And so it's a very short book. It is actually a collection of things that I had written through the course of miscarriages. So I noticed that I had been, over the course of the past few years, just one at a time, one miscarriage at a time, writing in my grief something in the notes of my phone just to get it out of my head. And I swiped out and I never went back and looked at it. And I did that for our last miscarriage and swiped out of it. And the Lord reminded me that I had done it before. And I went back and looked through the notes in my phone and I was like, oh my goodness. And he said, publish it. And I was like, this is a little personal. It's a little much, you know, and I'm a 0 to 10 kind of girl. Okay. We get personal real fast around here, but I was like, I don't know why somebody would want this. This is just my feelings and my thoughts. And he just told me, these are not just your feelings and your thoughts. These are all of their feelings and their thoughts. And they need someone to say, read this. You're not alone. And so I published it. And so it's actually available on ebook right now for pre-order on Amazon. I actually just loaded it onto my website, which is christianmiscarriage.com, for pre-order. So up until June 1st, or on June 1st, it'll be officially available in paperback and on ebook. But
so that means that when this episode comes out, it's gonna be available.
It's gonna be there. So you can get it on Amazon on ebook or paperback, or on my website paperback as well. And I actually just hit publish on my newest book, which is actually a miscarriage devotional journal. And so I am waiting on the approval to know when that happens, or when it'll be available. So I'm actually hoping, and this is a hope, we'll see how it happens. I'm hoping that it'll be available June 1st as well. I'm just waiting on their final approval. But that is actually, it's called Finding Hope After Miscarriage. And so the whole premise of that is actually the last birth that I attended. We were moving back and forth between our two business locations, and I had a birth that I was on call for. And we moved our family back down to our other location for a few months, like 3 days after she hit 40 weeks.
Ooh.
And so I actually drove them down there and then came back. And I was alone. She did not have the baby for like another 10 days.
Mm.
And I was completely alone for the entirety of that because I couldn't leave. I was on call. I had to be in nearby proximity.
Yes.
And so 2 nights before she had the baby, I was sitting in a hotel room on the phone with my husband. I'd had the idea for this devotional journal. I had been kicking it around. And I had kind of like designed it to be pretty, but I hadn't written anything. And I was just like, I don't know what to put on these pages. And I was on the phone with my husband, and I was like, it was 8:30 at night. It was so late at night. Well, that's late at this point in my life.
Yes.
It was 8:30 at night. It was getting crazy.
Yes.
And I was on the phone with him, and I said, I need to go. And he said, are you okay? And I said, yes, I need to write. And so he said, okay. And so we hung up, and the Lord just poured it out. Things that I had never. I actually went back and was reading yesterday with my daughter. We were just going back through and reading it because I didn't remember any of it. It just, the Holy Spirit just poured it out, and I think it was like 2:30 that night when I went to bed. And it's a 21-day devotional journal, and the Lord had just poured out the first 16 pages of that devotional journal.
Wow.
From 8:30 to 2:30.
Yeah.
And I was like, gosh, I hope she doesn't go into labor tonight because I'm so tired.
I'm on a roll here. Y'all gonna go on break.
It was like, and so we got to, it was like 2:30, and I was so tired. And I was typing like page 16 or like devotional 16 or 17, and suddenly realized I was like, oh, this isn't as easy as it was. Like, I'm having to think about this. And so I just told the Lord, like, okay, I'm going to stop here, because if it's not like, I need you to write this. This is not, I can't write this. And if it's not you, I don't want it on these pages. And so I deleted that whole page, and I put it aside for probably another month. And then the last like 5 pages came one at a time, every couple of weeks or so. And I told the Lord, I was like, I'm going to get it done now kind of girl. I'm like, listen, when we start, we got to finish now. And I told the Lord, I was like, all right, like, come on, we got to, I'm ready. Okay. I'm ready. And, but I had just told him, like, if you're not writing this, like, they don't need what I have to say, they need what you have to say.
Right.
And who can teach them about your word better than you? So if I started writing and I just felt like I was having to put effort into it at all, if I was having to think about it, if I was second guessing what was going on the page, I deleted the whole thing. And I said, okay, I'll put it aside until you're ready. And so I'm so stinking excited about that. But that is basically the entirety of my ministry right now is, speaking to women, doing my podcast, and then getting these books into their hands.
I have one last question.
Sure.
Okay.
What would you tell ladies who are going through what you've been through? Sharing your wisdom, the words that you have. For the ladies who will be listening to this, or their friends or their family, and say, "Ooh, I need to send this to, I know someone that I need to send this to." So
I would say, don't let anybody tell you that God stole your baby.
yes.
That's what I would say.
Yes.
Well-meaning people so often will say, because they don't know what else to say, grief makes people uncomfortable. And well-meaning Christians will say, well, God's will be done. Or, I guess the Lord needed another angel.
Yes. I've heard this.
But my God is not a murderer. Your God is not a murderer. And don't let anybody tell you that the Lord stole your baby, that he killed your
Mhm.
baby. God didn't take your baby.
Right.
The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
Yeah.
But our God comes to give life and more abundantly.
Mhm.
And I would say, even though he did not cause your pain,
Mhm.
he will redeem it for his glory. Every time.
Mhm. Awesome. That is awesome. And for you to emphasize, God does not kill. See, back in the Old Testament,
Yeah.
Yes.
okay, Ananias and Sapphira, you lied and they
Yes.
died right then and
Yes.
there.
David lost a baby.
Yes,
But we
then,
are under a new covenant.
yes, the
Exactly.
Lamb of God, he
Yes.
came to take everything, every stripe,
Yes.
everything. No,
Yes.
God does not kill.
Yes. The arbiter that Job wished that he had.
Mhm.
The go-between that could contend with God
Yes.
and argue his case. We have that arbiter.
Yes, we do.
We have that
Yes,
arbiter.
Mhm.
We have that go-between. We have that covenant with God.
Mhm.
And they did not.
Yeah.
Our God does not change, but his covenant did.
Absolutely.
That is awesome.
I can't say thank you enough for this conversation.
You have been a blessing.
Yes.
You have, that's
All I can
that's
say.
the best that I can say. You have truly been a blessing.
Y'all
And
have been a
for
blessing to
whoever
me.
hears this, I know
They're going to be blessed by
that
it.
they're going to start healing. Yeah, I know this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, don't mind me. Once the waterworks start, they don't stop.
Listen, you ain't telling me nothing I don't know.
It's fine, but then my eyes just they have a mind of their own.
Katie, we thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having
we
me.
thank you so much for sharing your story, for your insight, for what God has given you, for the projects that you have in the works, for your books, excuse me, your books, your devotional, and
And we're gonna have as many links as we can on the description as this episode comes on June 2nd. If you got the other one ready for June 1st,
I will let y'all
send
know.
it to me so that I can include it.
definitely.
Yes, absolutely.
Definitely. And we thank God for you for
Yes.
sharing your story, because we know every time you share your story, you heal more and more. And that is awesome. So don't stop sharing your story. Don't stop caring for women who are going through what you've been through. God has purpose for you. And I thank him for healing your pain through your service of others, through your books, through being a doula. I thank God most of all for your support system and your husband.
Oh my goodness.
We had the opportunity to meet her husband when we first talked with her. And I just had to tell him, you are awesome. You're an awesome support. Can you imagine a woman who goes through this and she doesn't have the support of a partner or a husband? That makes it even worse. But God's equipped you with who you need.
You did. I don't know that I would be alive right now if it were not for the faith of my husband. And I'm so grateful for him. Y'all, look, I done told y'all I was wearing lashes.
Oh, see, you're gonna make her lashes go.
This is what our podcast is about: faith, family, and mental health.
And being transparent and real and raw.
Yes, because for me to take my earbuds out, go and find, some tissue for her. Okay, this is real.
Yeah.
I don't know who else has done this, left the table in the middle of the but hey, this is how real we are.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, it's not staged. This is real.
Yep.
And I ran to the kitchen, grabbed some paper towels, and ran back. I was like, but I truly enjoyed being with you. We have enjoyed spending this time with you. And you are truly an encourager.
Yes.
And you've encouraged me to just be a better person. And you can do that by helping others.
Absolutely.
Helping others, whether it's a smile, saying hello. She knows me in the grocery store. I'll smile at people and say, hello, how are you? You don't know what kind of day that person is having.
No.
Okay? They could have just had a miscarriage. But because they don't have that support system, they had to come to the grocery store themselves to get what they needed. But then God loves them enough to send somebody like me or somebody else to just smile at them and tell them, have a blessed day.
I'm so grateful
enough.
for people like you.
He cares enough.
I am too.
It matters. It matters. It matters when
does.
that toddler is hollering in that store. It matters.
Oh, yeah, it does. I walked away from her, Mason. He'll be going through one of those meds.
She's worse. She doesn't just walk away. She then starts yelling at me, oh, these mothers that can't keep their children under control. Like she doesn't know who it is.
That's, you know what I do to my kid when they're acting a fool in the store? I'm like, where is your mother? Where is your mother?
I know, right? I know. Oh my God.
Does anybody know who these kids belong to?
Yeah.
She does that to me. She goes, some mothers can't keep their children under control. What is wrong with you?
That's so funny.
But you know what? They're angels among us. And not to brag about the baby, but we were at the post office the other day and we were talking about the different types of grief. And there was this lady waiting to deliver a package. And he went, introduced himself. I'm sending something. And he detached from me, went and talked to her and gave her a hug. And this lady started crying. Now, this is the second time in his little life that he's done this. And she said, you have no idea of the day I'm having and how you fixed it. And I told her, well, his hugs are healing. I can attest to that. She said, I'm here because my best friend passed away with no family in Georgia, and I'm sending her remains to her family. She was there to ship them to her family. And she had been holding out. She had been holding. I'm not
There's
laughing.
some of them
That was
paper
so
towels
funny.
over here.
She's the funny one. I'm not laughing at the woman's grief. I'm laughing at you.
Oh, Jesus.
And see, this is what I do. And like I said, I'm not laughing at the woman's grief. I'm laughing at you. And she was like, "Can I have another hug?" And he went, "Yes." And she's like, "You have no idea how you fix my day." And that's a 3-year-old. He sees people, and like I said, this is the second time that I know of that he's done this. We were in Florida 2 years ago, and he was 18 months at the time. Yes. And he went and hugged this woman, and she just plummeted crying. And we're like, "We're so sorry. What did he do?" She had not been hugged in 13 years, she told us. And he just went to her and hugged her.
You know, the Bible says to become like a child.
Yes. And now I'm going to really make her cry. Because you know where he gets that? From his grandma. She is the person who would feel in the supermarket that she needs to talk to someone or hug them. Yeah. She complains about him talking to everybody. He got it from her. So we do have angels.
Being a child who was abused, my voice was stifled. My joy was gone. So when I got my joy back, I promised God I will share it with whoever you put in front of me. I will share it. And something as small as a smile, which is maybe small to us, but it's huge to somebody else. I thank God that Mason got that from me because I got it from my grandmother. My grandmother knew no strangers, none. So I am thankful for this gift and I don't take it lightly. And I just want to pass it on. But we thank you. Oh my God, you have been
Yes.
such a blessing. We're going to
Thank y'all so
support
much for
you,
having
your
me.
books, whatever else you have coming out.
You don't have my email. Just send me anything if you have anything else coming up.
Keep in touch.
Yes, please.
We are definitely supporting you
Thank
with
you so
whatever you
much.
do and continue prayers for you and your ministry that came out of your pain and your blessing others and for your household. We pray God's richest blessings on you and your children and your husband and
Thank
your
you so
ministry.
much. Thank y'all so
And we
much.
thank you for being with us.
I have so enjoyed this with y'all.
Yes, same here.
Thank you, baby.
And
And
we'll
you have a
see.
wonderful day.
Yes, ma'am. Y'all have a great one.
All
Take
right.
care.
Bye bye.
Bye.
We hope that our listeners found today's episode as inspiring as we did. If you enjoyed this episode of Thrive by the Rising Muse, please view, like, and subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. You can also follow us on social media for updates and more inspiring content.
We said this before, and I want to say it again. This is supposed to be about community. So, like she said, send this video to somebody you think who needs it. Although we all need it because if we are not in the situation, we know somebody who is, or we just need to learn how to support somebody who is. Um, like I always say, follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, Threads, TikTok. Everything is at the Rising Muse. Thank you for listening. Hit the subscribe button. And until next time, and if you are in a crisis situation, don't forget to dial 988. Or if you have someone in your life who is in a crisis situation, dial 911. Look out for each other. Let's support each other. And until next time,
Don't forget to thrive.
have a great day. You too. Have a good day.
You
Bye.
too. Bye bye.